Hello everybody, today we're going to be talking on the ingredients that ignites the zeal of God. Last week we handled the zeal of God, the meaning of the zeal of God, the zeal of the Lord, what the zeal of the Lord means. The zeal of the Lord is not just our zeal for God. The zeal of the Lord has to do with God and not man. So today we're going to talk on the ingredients of the zeal of the Lord. That is that thing which we as human beings should have to ignite God's passion for us. Go through the verses in the Bible where the zeal of the Lord, the zeal of God was mentioned, or anything that has to do with the zeal of God. You'll find out that there's one thing that all of them have in common. One thing that all of those passages have in common is that they portray the zeal of the Lord as a passionate and powerful force, driven by his righteousness, his justice, and his love for his people. That's the righteousness, the justice, and God's love for us, his people. Whether in acts of judgment against the wicked or the deliverance or defense of his people against the enemies. Some of the verses in the Bible where the zeal of the Lord was mentioned can be found in 2 Kings chapter 19 verse 31, Ezekiel chapter 5 verse 13, Isaiah chapter 9 verse 7, Isaiah chapter 26 verse 11, Isaiah chapter 37 verse 32, Isaiah chapter 42 verse 13, Isaiah chapter 59 verse 17, and Isaiah chapter 63 verse 15, and much more. The characteristics of the zeal of the Lord in those passages had to do with whether God was fighting for his people, God was declaring judgment against the enemies of Israel, or the prophecy of Jesus Christ coming to the earth to die for us in the cross of Calvary. Everything had to do with God, and everything was something that only God can achieve. So how do we ignite the zeal, the passion of God for us? How do you ignite the passion of God for you? Let's look at some examples in the Bible. We'll start with Abraham. In Genesis chapter 12 verse 1 to 3, God told Abraham to relocate, and Abraham did just that. He did not argue, he was just obedient towards the instruction of God. You can go back in your spare time and read Genesis chapter 12 and read on how Abraham obeyed God and took his family and his household and left to the new land that God was sending him to. Abraham was so obedient and was a man after God's heart that even when Abraham got to Egypt and Pharaoh saw Sarah, his wife, although Abraham told Sarah that they should say that they are not husband and wife, they should say that they are brothers and sisters. However, Pharaoh fell for Sarah and took Sarah, and God was angry. God saw it, and even without Abraham complaining to God and praying to God and saying, God, see what has happened to my wife, God sent a plague on Pharaoh and his household, such that Pharaoh understood that the only way that this plague has come upon him was because of Sarah, and he let Sarah go. So this is one of the examples of God fighting Abraham's battles without him asking for help from God. Number two is that Abraham was faithful to God. He had faith in God and he was faithful to God. He was interested in the protection of God's name. If you read through chapter 14 of Genesis chapter 12, when Abraham and his household had relocated to Sodom, and there was a battle happening between the kings of those days, and the king of Sodom went to fight the battle. So in the course of the whole thing, Lot, Abraham's brother, was captured. Not only Lot and Abraham's household, they were captured. And Abraham took some of his servants. Abraham took over 300 of them and went to fight the battle and then rescued Lot and his people. After fighting the battle and winning the battle, Abraham brought back those who captured Lot with their possession. The king of Sodom told Abraham that he can take the spoils and leave the people that he captured with him. And Abraham refused. In verse 22 to 23, Abraham said, and I quote, Abraham said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up my hand and sworn to the Lord God Most High, the possessor and maker of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or a shoelace or anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abraham rich. So Abraham was interested in protecting the dignity of God.